So I think we're all pretty aware of what happened, unfortunately, last night in New Zealand. I'm not going to go into much detail about it here. And the reason being is, number one, I can't give the most updated and credible information on what has happened. Primarily, I can only talk about what actually happened last night, as that's pretty much what I saw unfold on social media. The very basics of it is that 4 people have been arrested in connection to 2 separate mosque shootings in the city of Christchurch, New Zealand that killed 49 and injured dozens more. They wrote an 87-page manifesto that detailed their exact reasons as to why they did this, which actually was ridden with a lot of irony, false truths, and things like that. So, unfortunately, this attack was broadcasted, and that means that people watched it live, and unfortunately, there's been a lot of footage and images of it circulating around the internet. I have unfortunately seen the raw, unedited video of what happened in one of those mosques, and I have to say, it's fucking disgusting, and I just really wish I didn't see it. I mean, especially if you were there in the moment, that would have been probably the most traumatizing thing anyone would ever have to endure. And I wouldn't wish a situation like that really on anybody. As fucked up and bad as it was for me to see from basically a third person from the other side of the world, I just can't imagine what the people who were actually inside of those mosques had to see when everything was happening, and my condolences are definitely with the victims and their families. With that being said, I think we are going to change the charity event that was planned probably for early next month into a fundraiser to help support the families and the victims of the attack. I've talked about it with some of the other participants, and it seems like it's a pretty generally agreed upon idea, along with your guys' feedback saying that it was probably the best idea as well. I think we've already found a group or a GoFundMe that we can already donate the proceeds to, so that's the basic information about what happened. For those of you who whatever reason just haven't heard of what's happened yet, this video is probably going live around 5 p.m. on the East Coast, so by this time you should have already heard all this information, but you know, I don't know how often the people who watch these videos check up on the news or talk to people, so unfortunately, especially with the situation, it's great to have backstory. I won't be showing the shooter's face, his name, I won't be reading his manifesto unless it directly references something that I'll be talking about today, and now that we have that out of the way, realistically, I want to talk about how PewDiePie is, for some reason, being tied up into this entire thing. Why it's ridiculous that he's actually getting blame for this unfortunate massacre. How it doesn't at all help what has happened in Christchurch, how it doesn't help the investigation, how it doesn't help people recover, and how actually ignorant it shows people to be when it comes down to it at the end of the day. So while live streaming the beginning stages of his attack, one of the perpetrators in the Christchurch attack, he said subscribe to PewDiePie on the live stream that was broadcasted on Facebook Live. This was one of the most immediately noticeable pieces of information really about this whole thing. As I woke up from a nap last night, I had people DMing me left and right talking about how there was an incident going on in New Zealand and that it was a PewDiePie supporter and how he had said subscribe to PewDiePie and it's just going to be a nightmare for YouTube. And I hope that that's not the case, because you can't blame PewDiePie for this attack. Now, people, of course, are trying to, primarily the media and stupid journalists, and I don't really understand that logic because, you know, they've already arrested 4 people in connection to this attack. One of them has already been charged with murder. So how is a guy who lives, I believe, in the United Kingdom, thousands of miles away, basically on the other side of the fucking planet, responsible for an attack that took place by a completely separate psychopath who he had no relation with at all, had no communication to? How is it his fault that just because this guy basically memed and said his name right before he did this, it's PewDiePie's fault? And if you don't believe me, a lot of the headlines that I've read about this whole thing automatically bring PewDiePie up, and in the headline. It doesn't even have to be in the actual text. Trust me, there's plenty more of that. There's plenty more of people, you know, he said subscribe to PewDiePie, which has caused a lot of online backlash. You know, PewDiePie has been accused of this and blah, 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 blah. I won't take the 25 seconds to do real journalism and see that these things are untrue, because that would just, well, that'd take time. It's insane to me, man. The media has just run, really, with this narrative that this guy was a PewDiePie supporter, even though it's very clear from his manifesto, which I'm not going to read or show, that his primary goal was to turn people against one another and to shift the cause and the blame away from himself and onto other groups, so it could cause turmoil in the country of New Zealand and ultimately cause a civil war. That was literally this guy's plan. His plan was to do just unspeakable things, and then for people to not blame him, not blame his problems, that led to him doing this, but instead to blame other political parties, to blame other people along these political boundaries, and to blame PewDiePie, and to blame Candace Owens, and all the other people that he name-dropped in this manifesto, or in his videos, okay? That's what the entire plan was. And the media is feeding directly into it, okay? Because anyone with a fucking brain can understand that just because you say somebody's name before you do something doesn't shift responsibility at all, not even a lick of it onto that person. A great tweet that I saw last night about this whole thing, that I unfortunately can't find or else I'd show it, but it said something along the lines of, I can shout anyone's name before I do something like this. I can yell anyone's name before I kill people. Going off of this logic, does that make it the other person's fault that the act happened? Because at least that's what the media is kind of pushing. That's the narrative that the media is already kind of pushing, and unfortunately it had gotten to the point, especially once PewDiePie had officially responded to the tragic event with this tweet, that PewDiePie, at least in the United States, actually jumped over the New Zealand attack on the trending tab. There was more people tweeting about PewDiePie than there were about the shooting, because everyone knew what the media was going to do. Everyone knew that once this whole sub to PewDiePie thing got big enough, that the media wasn't going to blame the shooter. It's never the shooter's fault, right? It's always someone else's fault. It's something else's fault, right? I don't know if I'm the only one who notices this, but when tragedies like this happen, isn't it magical how all of a sudden the focus of blame is automatically shifted away from the person who's done what happened? It's insane how that always works out. It's insane how every time something like this happens, they find a scapegoat. They don't blame the shooter. The shooter becomes a martyr, and they've already done it with this guy. They've already done it with this guy. I thought this was going to be the first major event of my life that I had seen where the attacker's name, face, and life story wasn't going to be published in every media outlet the next day, because it hadn't really happened that much when the attack was unfolding. When it was unfolding, even though they already knew who it was, by the time the news stories even came out, I had already been on the dude's Twitter. I had seen the pictures of the guns and magazines that he had posted with the names and phrases of Muslim people, and here's your migration and things like that painted on his weapons. Unfortunate things, just horrible things, right? His name was already out there, but it hadn't been publicized. But of course now today, the dude has been made a fucking hero by the media. Virtually every news story I'm seeing at this point has his name, has his background. Oh, he was just this, he was just that. And this is how every single one of these events happens. Somebody does some unspeakable shit, does something so horrible that most of us can't really imagine doing something like this. And the next day, the media is sensationalizing every detail about his life in order to gain clicks, in order to fucking just basically profit off of it. And throughout this whole thing, they shift the focus of blame every single time away from who actually did it. They always manage to find a way. Within the hour, there's always someone being divided by political lines. It's this person's fault because they believe this. It's this person's fault because they think that. It's not the guy's fault for walking in the fucking mosque with the rifle and killing everybody. It's not his fault. And this witch hunt behavior that takes place after this, that doesn't help anybody, that doesn't solve the problem, is ridiculous. And the fact that a YouTuber who lives on the other side of the planet is catching blame absolutely blows my mind. This shows the absolute, and I mean absolute, idiocy of the mainstream media. Spinning a false narrative, not speaking the right details, misleading people. And this happens all the time, man. This happens every single time something like this happens. I apologize if I sound passionate about this, because I really am, because I hate waking up and seeing shit like this. I hate when situations like this happen. It's sad, man. 49 people died. 49 people, okay? It's not just one or two. 49 killed because they went to pray. I'm not the most religious person on earth. I'm agnostic. But Jesus Christ, what kind of low do you have to hit to kill people in one of what's supposed to be one of the safest places on earth? And then for the media to purposely spin this narrative, to attack other people, and to shift the blame onto other people is downright disgusting. People keep asking me, why do you care so much about PewDiePie getting blamed for it? he didn't have anything to do with the attack. You're literally watching somebody get the blame shifted on them for not doing anything at all. It plays literally right into what the shooter wanted to happen. He literally said it in his manifesto that he wanted to turn people against each other and shift the actions and discourse of politics and beliefs around the world. He literally said that. This is directly related to what is happening now, because the media, which has access to the manifesto and is trying to say that it's fake, even though it's been proven that it's not fake, at least I believe it's been proven to be not fake, you know, they're trying to say it's fake, that way they can spin blame, that way they can shift blame. That is an all-time low, okay? That is just a ridiculous shift. You can't be much shittier than that. How are we going to get anywhere with situations like this when we're not blaming the root causes of the problem, when we're not identifying all of the causes of the problem and making sure that we do something about all of it, okay? There are so many other factors to it that I think we should be considering, and I don't think one of them is blaming a online personality from across the world because this guy memed his name out in vain before he did something unspeakable. This is a situation that journalists, quote-unquote, and the media have used to spin a false narrative that PewDiePie is somehow related to this. PewDiePie is not to blame, folks. Rest in peace to the victims of this attack. Now, can we please actually focus on the issue